I walked back home on Christmas Eve, the snow falling softly, the warm yellow lights on the porch, flickering like a scene from one of those Christmas movies. But something felt off, like I no longer belonged in this picture-perfect scene. The old wooden door creaked open as I stepped in, and warmth from the fireplace hit me. The smell of cinnamon and gingerbread cookies filling the air, just like the holidays I used to know. But as soon as I saw the photo on the wall, I knew none of it was real. It hung above the fireplace, framed in mahogany, a glossy print, carefully positioned as if it were the family's prized possession. And there they were, my family, the three of them. My mom, wearing her favorite ivory sweater, stood next to my dad, his usual polite smile plastered on his face. And in the middle, my younger sister Emma, pulling a goofy face like she always did. I stared at the picture for what felt like an eternity, the chill biting through my coat. Because I wasn't in it, not hiding in the back, not cropped out, I wasn't there at all. This wasn't a rushed snapshot or a photo carelessly cropped. This was a carefully taken and edited photo, printed large and displayed in the most important room of the house. A choice made on purpose, like I had never existed. An unwanted memory wiped away with the click of a button. I swallowed hard, the lump in my throat almost choking me, but I stepped into the living room as if nothing was wrong. From the kitchen, my mom's voice floated over, calm and sweet, as if everything were just as it should be. "Olivia, you're home. I'm making that chicken stew you love," she called, her voice unaffected, not a single word about my long flight or the months I'd been gone. No explanation for the photo, for the glaring absence of me in their memories. I hung up my coat, brushed the snow off my boots, and tried to convince myself that maybe it was all in my head. Perhaps it was just a temporary photo, but my mind wasn't fooled so easily. Ryan sat on the couch, glued to his phone, giving me a slight nod without even lifting his gaze. "You're here. I thought you weren't coming," he muttered, not really looking up. I forced a smile and sat down across from him. "Yeah, I thought the same thing once," I replied, keeping my tone light, though my heart wasn't in it. On the table, neatly wrapped gifts sat, each with its own name, Dad's, Mom's, Ryan's, but not mine. I looked at the tree, decorated just as perfectly as always, but the handmade ornaments I made as a kid were gone. The glass baubles, the glittery wreaths, gone, like I'd never left a mark here. My mom stepped in, apron dusted with flour, her face glowing. "Dinner's almost ready. Is everyone hungry?" she asked, still smiling, still pretending like everything was fine. I tried to catch a flicker of guilt in her eyes, but there was nothing. She smiled, gentle as ever, like there was nothing worth talking about. "Mom," I started, but then stopped. I had planned to ask about the photo, but something stopped me. I already knew what she'd say. A forced laugh, a "don't be so sensitive," an excuse that it meant nothing. I didn't have the energy to hear it again. Dad came down, a glass of wine in hand. "Olivia, you look good. What have you been up to?" His voice was casual, like he was chatting with a neighbor. Nada, "How are you?" or "I missed you." Just a casual question, like nothing had ever changed. "Thanks, I've been managing," I replied, then walked into the kitchen, the warmth from the oven filling the space. The food smelled incredible, perfectly prepared, but I had no appetite. It didn't feel like home anymore. Dinner felt like a performance. Everyone played their part. Mom asked Emma about her internship at the agency. Dad went on about his upcoming golf tournament. And me? I just sat there, an unwilling spectator. No one asked about my new job, why I'd moved cities, or even if I was still with my ex. Every word felt like a tiny needle, subtle but sharp enough to remind me that I was just a stranger in this house, here for the occasion. When Emma opened her gift from our parents, a shiny, expensive smartwatch, I fought to keep my face neutral. As for me, at the end of the meal, I was handed a pair of wool socks and a card that read, "Merry Christmas to my strong daughter." I forced a smile, not because I was happy, but because I'd long stopped expecting anything. After dinner, Mom casually told me I'd be sleeping in the guest room, not my old room, the one with the faded wallpaper and daisy print sheets I used to love. That room was now a storage unit, its familiar bed replaced with a foreign one, a flickering nightlight casting strange shadows. I sat on the edge of the bed, still wrapped in my scarf, and pulled from my coat pocket a thick cream envelope, its recipient's name carefully written in delicate handwriting. I had prepared it weeks ago, unsure of when the right moment would come. But when I saw the photo above the fireplace, my hesitation vanished. I didn't need to shout. No explanation required. I just needed the truth to be out in the open, where it belonged. That night, I lay there listening to the wind howl outside, the soft sound of footsteps heading toward the kitchen for water. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about all the years I had waited for a real hug, for someone to ask how I was, for just a simple recognition. But now, all I had was an empty space in the family photo, and an envelope containing something they couldn't deny any longer. Christmas morning arrived with the smell of waffles filling the air and soft music playing from the small speaker in the kitchen. "Let It Snow" softly played through the closed door, mixed with Mom's laughter and the scrape of chairs on the wooden floor. I stayed still for a moment, staring at the ceiling, before reaching for the envelope, still tucked in my coat pocket, hanging at the head of the bed. The paper felt smooth under my fingers, as firm as the resolve I had felt the night before. As I stepped into the kitchen, everything was set perfectly, like a magazine cover shoot. The table was dressed with a red and white checkered cloth. Candles flickered, and a tray of cinnamon rolls sat in the center like a centerpiece. Mom was plating scrambled eggs, her hair in a neat bun, lips painted coral. She looked so cheerful, like everything was just as it should be, as if nothing had happened the night before. "Good morning, sweetheart. Hope you slept well," Mom said, not even turning around. "The living room was a bit cold," I said, pouring myself a cup of coffee. Dad was already seated at the table, focused on his phone, and gave a brief nod as I pulled out a chair. Emma was talking about her new job in Austin, where she'd just been hired as an interior designer for a restaurant chain. My sister spoke with the tone of someone used to being listened to. Steady voice, confident eyes, pauses timed just right. "I'll be flying to Tokyo in February," she said. "They're opening a new branch, and they want me to help with the Zen-inspired LED lighting concept." "That's amazing," Mom said, eyes lighting up. "I always knew you had a creative touch. Remember when you repainted the bathroom at 13? No one in the family has dared to change that wall color since," she added, as everyone laughed. Everyone laughed, and I forced a smile, but it felt like I was smiling in someone else's photo. Out of place. "Olivia, are you planning to switch jobs?" Dad asked, still focused on his screen. "I already did back in September. I'm working as an operations manager for a logistics firm in Denver." "Oh, right, Denver." No one said anything more. No congratulations, no questions, no acknowledgement. Just a silence that was quickly drowned out by Emma, going on and on about her showroom design project in Manhattan. When the gifts came out, I stayed seated, already knowing how it would play out, just like every year before. Emma opened Mom's gift first. Inside was a Tag Heuer watch with a brown leather strap and a stunning blue dial. A clear collector's edition. "Oh wow, Mom, Dad, this is the limited edition," Emma exclaimed, her eyes sparkling like she'd just performed some kind of magic. "We knew you loved this model since last year, so your dad ordered it back in June," Mom added. Dad smiled and patted Emma on the shoulder, like he had just closed the biggest deal of his life. As for me, I got a spoon, just a simple red spoon with the words "Special Daughter" engraved on it. Who else could it be? I turned the spoon in my hands, my finger tracing the engraved words, as if brushing against an old tired joke. "I thought it was cute," Mom said lightly. "It made me think of you right away." I smiled, but all I felt was emptiness. A hollow echo where pride should have been. I used to tell myself they didn't know how to show affection. Maybe that's all it was. But the older I got, the more I realized it wasn't that they didn't know how. They just didn't want to give it to me. I remembered when I was 17. I had been invited to a summer internship at a prestigious research institute in New Jersey. I was thrilled to tell my parents, thinking they'd finally be proud of me. But Mom just asked, "Can you wait until next year? Emma needs me to take her to weekend art classes." So, I didn't go. A year later, Emma got an art scholarship to UCLA, and the entire family threw a massive outdoor party. Applause, lights, a 3-tier cake. When I got my acceptance letter from the state business school, all I got was a quick hug from Dad and a reminder, "Make sure you save your money." I used to think I was stronger than Emma. I worked part-time jobs, from handing out flyers to working at the supermarket. Once I couldn't afford a textbook, so I handwrote all my lecture notes on loose paper and snapped pictures of the library's copy with my old phone. I never blamed anyone. I just wished someone had asked, "Do you need help?" When I got sick during my last year of college, running a high fever for 3 days, barely strong enough to get medicine, I called Mom. She answered, said she was at Emma's art exhibit, and asked if I could wait until the weekend. I hung up, and for the first time, I felt both empty and strangely liberated. That's when I started learning to live without them, without encouragement, without gifts, without recognition. But knowing something is one thing, living with it is another. Watching Emma beam over her new watch, I wasn't angry at her. I just saw more clearly where I stood, always on the periphery, just enough not to be forgotten, but never enough to truly be kept. Breakfast ended with laughter. I washed my mug and my spoon, placed it upside down on the drying rack, then quietly grabbed my coat from the living room. The envelope was still tucked in my pocket. I had planned to wait until noon, after all the gifts were opened, before doing anything, but something had changed in me. After everyone had finished their roles, I could feel it in my bones. Something had shifted. The photo above the fireplace, the shiny watch, it all piled up inside me, pushing me to the breaking point I'd been to so many times before. I pulled out the envelope and laid it on the table next to a bowl of untouched strawberries. Not a single person noticed. I leaned back, waiting for the moment everything would shift. Not because I was causing a scene, but because for the first time, I was forcing them to face the truth. I'll never forget that day. It was a crisp September morning, just chilly enough. I was at the Fremont County Administrative Office, requesting a copy of my residency certificate for a new job. It was just a routine errand, nothing special. But I never expected that one piece of paper would unlock a door that had been shut tight for almost a decade. The receptionist, a middle-aged woman with graying hair and reading glasses hanging from a chain, glanced at her screen. Then, she tilted her head and asked, "You're Olivia Moore, born July 18, 1992, right?" I nodded. "So you're still listed as the owner of 2185 Brookfield Street?" she asked. I froze. "Sorry, what?" I stammered. 2185 Brookfield, the triplex near Creek-Eyed Park," she said, speaking in that steady tone, as if she was reading a list. "That property's been in your name since 2016, transferred from Mr. Edward Moore," she continued. "Edward Moore was my grandfather. He passed away 8 years ago." I thanked her and walked away, feeling like someone had just spoken to me in a language I didn't understand. I didn't own a house. I'd never been told about any inheritance. No one had ever mentioned that my grandfather left anything to me. The entire week after, I moved through life like a ghost. I went to work, smiled, laughed as I always did. But at night, I started digging. searching through public records, emailing the property office, and hiring a lawyer to sift through the legal documents connected to Edward Moore. And layer by layer, the truth came to light. My grandfather had left a clear, notarized will, stating, "I leave full ownership of the property at 2185 Brookfield Street to my granddaughter, Catherine Moore. No conditions, no intermediaries." But I'd never seen that will, because right after he passed, my dad, Robert Moore, handled all the paperwork. He told me Grandpa left some cash for funeral expenses and a few keepsakes for us to keep. I never thought to question it. It wasn't until I went through the tax records that I noticed my parents' names kept showing up in income reports for renting out the 3 units in that house. They had been collecting rent quietly, renovating, even raising prices for 7 years, acting as property managers without any legal right. Meanwhile, I, the only legal heir, had been completely left out of the loop. I remember sitting for hours in front of my computer, hands shaking as I read through every detail. While I was borrowing money to pay for dorm fees and eating cold sandwiches to save for the next semester, my parents were using property in my name to cover Emma's private tuition, fund her birthday parties, and take lavish spring vacations to Florida. Once the shock wore off, a strange calm settled in. No more bursts of anger, no more feeling overlooked, just a cold, clear certainty. I knew exactly what I needed to do. I hired a lawyer to prepare a full set of documents, certified copies of the will, evidence from property records, bank statements, and letters from the rental office. A nearly 1-inch thick file, neatly sealed in a cream envelope stamped with a red legal seal. I had carried it in my coat pocket since early December, as if it was the only thing keeping me sane during these forced family dinners. I wasn't planning to explode. I didn't need a big, dramatic scene. I just wanted them to know that this time, I wasn't the compliant daughter waiting for an explanation that would never come. I remembered the last time I mentioned Grandpa. It was on my 25th birthday, quietly bringing cake to his grave, sitting there for hours telling him about my job and how I'd moved to Portland. When I told Mom, she just nodded and said Emma was also thinking about moving there because the street art scene in Portland really suited her energy. Not a single word about the fact that I'd been living there for 2 years already. Funny thing is, I'd forgotten about that house too. Grandpa always said he'd renovate it after retiring and turn it into a place where lonely seniors could rent at a fair price. I thought he had sold it ages ago. I never asked again because I wasn't used to expecting anything from this family. Now I understand. Some things you don't need to ask for. They were always yours. That night, I placed the envelope on the dining table, surrounded by torn wrapping paper and half-empty wine glasses. No one noticed. No one asked. They were too busy chatting, throwing hollow praise at Emma and her plans to open her own gallery. I sat there quietly, my hand resting on the red spoon, and this time, I truly believed the words. I was special because I was the only one in that room carrying the truth, and I was about to make them taste it. Every word, every line, no accusations, no tears, just facts, clear and simple, wrapped in a Christmas smile. I was ready. I sat quietly at the corner of the table, sipping lukewarm coffee, stir coffee in cup, with that special daughter, red spoon. Around me, Christmas carried on, exactly as it had been scripted. Mom added more cookies to the plate. Dad played soft classical music from the Bluetooth speaker, and Emma laughed loudly as she unwrapped another present. A pair of next-gen noise-canceling headphones, the exact model she'd mentioned during an interview. The cream-colored envelope still lay untouched on the table, surrounded by wrapping paper, red ribbons, and crumbs. No one noticed it, not until Mom picked it up with a curious look. "What's this?" she asked, her voice still light, as if she were asking about dessert. I looked up, completely unfazed. "From me?" Dad raised an eyebrow, his hands halting mid-tie on the last bow of Emma's gift. "You didn't have to get us anything. Just having you here is enough," he added, trying to sound casual. I set my coffee cup down and said calmly, "I know, but this time I wanted to." The air hung for a beat, just long enough for me to feel the shift was coming. My mom sat down, turning the envelope over in her hands, looking to Dad as if waiting for some kind of sign. He gave a small nod, and she began opening it. The sound of the rustling paper echoed through the too-quiet room. Dad leaned over her shoulder to read along. Emma was still organizing wrapping paper, but I could feel her eyes shifting my way. About 20 seconds passed. I hadn't taken my eyes off them. Mom's face gradually drained of color, while Dad's brow furrowed, sweat gathering at the tip of his nose. "What is this?" Mom asked, her voice lowering. The lightness was gone. I answered slowly, clearly, almost like reading from a contract. "That's a copy of Grandpa's will. It clearly states he left the house on Brookfield Street to me directly, without conditions or intermediaries." Mom blinked rapidly, and Dad placed the papers down like they had burned his hands. Emma looked up, confused. "Wait, what house?" I turned to Emma, calm as ever. "The house you used for your creative lifestyle photo shoot in last fall's campaign." Emma's face hardened. "You mean, yes?" I cut in, my tone sharp. "That house was a gift from Grandpa to me. But for the past 7 years, Mom and Dad have been secretly renting it out, collecting money, and treating it like their own." My dad shot up from his chair, the legs scraping against the floor in protest. "Olivia, this isn't—" "It's not what you think," he stammered, trying to regain control. I didn't respond. I simply pulled out a confirmation letter from the property registry and a letter from the attorney, placing them down in front of them. "It's all here. Title transfer records, rental income statements, bank records, everything's clear." I wasn't here to argue. I was here to inform them. Mom stayed seated, her mouth slightly open, as if she were scrambling for the right words. But finally, all she could muster was a sigh. "We didn't mean to, Olivia. Things were complicated back then. You were in school. You couldn't manage a property. Your father just wanted to keep things steady." For the first time, I leaned forward. No one asked me. No one told me. No one gave me the chance to decide what to do with my own inheritance. And all that time, I was borrowing money, eating instant noodles, juggling 3 jobs just to stay afloat, while you used my money to vacation in Palm Springs. My dad raised a hand, trying to calm the situation. "You were always strong. You didn't need—" he began, but I cut him off. "It's that kind of thinking that left me behind," I said, my voice steady but low. "Being strong doesn't mean being used. Not needing help doesn't mean I deserve to be forgotten." Emma stood up, hands on her hips. "Oh, I didn't know anything about this." "You didn't need to," I replied coldly. "You just got to enjoy it." Silence filled the room, heavy and thick. Mom looked up, her eyes glassy but dry. "So what are you going to do?" she asked quietly. "I already did," I said, my words clear and final. "The house is officially back in my name. All lease agreements have been updated. Starting next month, rent will be deposited directly into my account. You no longer have access." Dad frowned. "By doing this, you're destroying everything we built." I laughed softly but firmly. "No, Dad, I'm just taking back what's mine." My mom reached out, her voice frantic. "But you can't do this to your family." I looked her straight in the eye. "Family? You haven't been mine for a long time." I stood up, putting my coat on as the background Christmas music played awkwardly, like it didn't belong. Emma called out, "You think you're better than us now?" I turned back, giving a faint smile. "No, Emma. I just know I'm not beneath you anymore." I walked out of that house without looking back, without needing to say another word. The snow was falling softly, light as mist, neither heavy nor refusing to fall. I took a deep breath of the cold, sharp air. Clean. Real. I knew, from that moment, I was no longer hidden, no longer the faded figure in old photographs, no longer on the edge of family memory. I was the one standing in the center of my own story, the center of the house that now carried my name, the center of the truth. And this time, I wasn't running from it. 2 weeks after Christmas, the first message came. It was 9 a.m. on a Tuesday as I was making coffee in the small kitchen of my apartment in Denver. My phone lit up with a message from Mom. "Sweetheart, your dad and I just got a notice from the bank. We need to talk urgently." I didn't reply, not because I didn't care, but because I had learned to trust silence more than any explanation. 7 years of silence couldn't be undone by 3 broken lines in a text message. The second message came that afternoon, from a number I hadn't saved, but I recognized the handwriting style instantly. "I know you're angry, but can we sit down and talk like adults? You don't want this to tear the whole family apart," the message read. This time I chuckled. Like adults? Adults don't alter wills behind their daughter's back. Adults don't use their daughter's property to fund vacations for the chosen child, I thought, smirking. I turned off the notifications, dismissing them for good. By the end of January, I received a message from an old friend who lived near the condo my parents had been staying in. She sent me a photo. The condo, once their home, now had a handwritten "For sale by owner" sign taped to a piece of cardboard. A week later, the listing appeared on a local classified site. "No agent, must sell quickly due to personal financial matters," the description read. That condo had once been what Mom called our second nest, where she hung her favorite landscape paintings and told Emma, "Someday, you can use this as your creative office." Now, they were being forced to sell it. I didn't feel triumphant, but neither did I feel guilty. I knew without the rental income from Brookfield, they wouldn't be able to maintain both properties. I also knew that for all those years, they had no stable income. My dad had retired from engineering 3 years ago, and Mom only worked a few part-time shifts at a nearby flower shop. They had been living entirely off rent money from property they had kept hidden from Emma and me. One evening, mid-February, while I was reading, my phone lit up again. It was Emma. "I got kicked out of the studio. They said I've been late on rent," the message read. "Mom says you won't help. Are you seriously going to ignore this?" I locked my phone. Emma had once bragged about that studio at a year-end party in Los Angeles, saying it was a place for creative freedom, untouched by finances or responsibility. Maybe now, he was finally realizing that even freedom needed to be anchored by truth and integrity. About a week later, I heard through friends that Emma had moved back in with our parents. They were all now sharing the old house in Fremont, the same one Mom had once called too small for big dreams. That house had once been where I slept on the couch during the holidays. Now they had no choice but to return there. I lived my life. Waking up early, working at the logistics company, coming home to read in the evenings, sometimes watering my plants or walking the dog I'd recently adopted around the park. I no longer had to prove myself, no longer had to construct a story just to make someone proud. I simply lived peacefully in the house on Brookfield. I officially took ownership of the property and updated the lease agreements for the 3 families living there. When I announced a 10% rent reduction below market rate, one of the tenants burst into tears. The woman on the ground floor hugged me tightly, whispering that I was the first landlord who made her feel truly seen. That moment meant more than any gift I'd ever waited for from my parents. The final message came one afternoon in March, accompanied by a long email. It was from my mother. "Olivia, I know you're angry, but you can't let this one thing ruin everything. We're family. Emma is really struggling. Your father hasn't slept in a month. I know I was wrong, but please think it over. Families shouldn't fall apart over one house. I read that line and paused. One house. I remembered all those nights I spent in that cold, drafty dorm room, too broke to even buy a new blanket. All the times I had to choose between buying a textbook or filling my gas tank. All those months I ignored their phone calls, knowing they couldn't, or rather wouldn't, help. And now, when I'm no longer a resource, they can drain quietly. They call it just one little thing, just a house. I closed the email, not bothering to respond. I didn't need to scream, didn't need to defend myself, or argue. My silence was the clearest answer I could give. I had started learning how to embrace silence, not the silence of being forgotten, but the quiet of living in alignment with my own worth. I didn't expect them to understand. I only hoped they would stop. And if they couldn't, I wasn't there to listen anymore. One Sunday afternoon, sitting in the backyard of the Brookfield house, I watched sunlight filter through the leaves and thought, maybe this is what I really inherited from Grandpa. Not a house, but the right to choose my own life. Spring arrived early that year. The maple tree in front of Brookfield started budding by late March. Each weekend I spent time in the backyard, shovel in hand, sometimes simply feeling the earth beneath me like a quiet reminder of what I had built. I truly belonged here. I hired a local crew to fix the roof, replace the rotting wooden window frames, and repaint the white fence that outlined the small front yard. Nothing extravagant. I just wanted this place to be a calm, simple refuge, free from lies and sidelong glances, a real home. The ground floor stayed the same with 3 rental units. I moved to the second floor, in the room where Grandpa had once spent his quiet afternoons reading. That room had a large window overlooking the park, where every morning I could hear sparrows chirping and watch sunlight spill across the white linen curtains. I bought a navy blue armchair just like the one Grandpa used to have. I placed it in the corner next to a small bookshelf and a brass reading lamp. In the evenings, I sat there sipping tea, reading, journaling. And not once did anyone call my name, just to ask about Emma. One Saturday, I asked my close friend, Elise, to take a picture of me. Not a formal portrait, just me standing in front of the house, wearing an old khaki coat, holding a ring of keys with the freshly painted mahogany door behind me. No one else in the frame, no one standing beside me, and that was exactly how I wanted it. I printed the photo, placed it in a dark wood frame, and hung it in the hallway just outside my bedroom. Every time I passed by, I remembered that moment, holding those keys, feeling like I was finally holding my life with both hands. I no longer checked my phone every few minutes. No longer woke up in the middle of the night because of messages from my mom. No longer waiting for an explanation or an apology strong enough to mend the cracks that had formed over the years. I wasn't angry anymore. The anger that had once burned in my chest on those long nights had cooled, like ashes after a fire. Now I just felt quiet, as if after everything, peace was the one thing that truly confirmed I had survived, and more than that, I had lived. One drizzly afternoon, while walking around the neighborhood, I ran into Mrs. Simmons, the elderly neighbor who lived 2 doors down. She walked over slowly, carrying a bouquet of wild daisies. "You must be Olivia Moore, right?" she asked, a look of recognition in her eyes. "Yes, I am," I replied, smiling. "I used to know Edward Moore, a good man. He'd lend me his car when I needed to pick up groceries from the market. This house, it's yours now?" I nodded. She handed me the flowers, a simple yet kind gesture. "He'd be so proud of you," she said. "You've brought this place back to life." I held the bouquet, feeling my heart ease, as if someone had gently soothed it. Not everyone knew the full story, but that didn't matter. What mattered was, I no longer had to prove myself. Since moving to Brookfield, I had started writing down the things I used to overlook. Not as a memoir or anything grand, just small entries. Today it rained lightly. I finished a good book. One of the tenants left a thank you note for fixing the washer on time. Little things, but real. The kind of feeling I never had while living in Emma's shadow, under the weight of invisible expectations. One day, while watering plants on the back porch, I received a card. There was no return address, but I instantly recognized the handwriting. It was from my mom. Inside, there was an old photo of me and Grandpa standing side by side at the wooden table in the backyard when I was 12. His hand was resting on my shoulder, and we were both smiling. Below the photo was a short message. "We didn't know how to hold on to you. I hope you hold on to yourself." It was from Mom. No apology, no explanation, no more blame. But I didn't feel hurt anymore. I folded the card and placed it in the drawer of my writing desk, right next to the letter Grandpa had written me when I graduated high school. I didn't need promises from the past. I just needed to protect the present. That summer, I invited a few friends over for dinner. Friends who had supported me even without knowing the whole story. We had BBQ in the backyard, strung up fairy lights in the maple tree, and played soft jazz music. I couldn't remember the last time I'd laughed so much. One of them, Marcus, a photographer, pointed to the house and said, "This place has really good energy. Not the fancy kind, but the kind that makes you want to stay." I nodded, my eyes drifting toward the porch, where the lights shimmered against fresh green leaves. Because it doesn't ask anyone to pretend. I was no longer the child sitting at the edge of the table, hoping someone would ask, "Are you okay?" I was no longer the girl staring silently at a family photo, missing one face. Now I was the only one in the frame, and I was enough. No explanations needed, no forgiveness required, no need to be remembered by those who once tried to erase me from their story. Because in the end, I rewrote my story, line by line, with truth, with resilience, and with the unconditional love I gave to myself. I am Olivia Moore, and for the first time in my life, I don't need to remind anyone of that. From my own story, I've learned that sometimes the strongest thing we can do is walk away from places that no longer love us, not to get even, but to reclaim our worth. I no longer wait for validation from those who've forgotten me. Instead, I've learned to live truthfully, rebuild from the pieces, and turn them into something solid. In this life, even if no one gives me what I deserve, I can still give it to myself. What do you think about Olivia's story? If you were in her shoes, would you have done anything differently? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow for more heartfelt, meaningful stories about life and family in upcoming videos.